Welcome to Spokes and Strategy, Marketing the Bicycle with Brandon Morphew and Chris Mailman of Miso Partners. Hello, it's Brandon Morphew, Chris Mailman, and we're super excited to have Jake Munroe from Munroe Velo here on Spokes and Strategy. So we're rolling into, I think this is going to be episode 6. So super excited to have you, Jake, and great to be here again with you, Chris. If you don't mind, Jake, just a quick intro. What's your story? Where are you coming from?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I've been listening to the last couple episodes, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. So it's really cool to hear other people's stories. But yeah, I own a bike shop in Topsfield, Massachusetts, called Munroe Velo. We just opened a couple years ago, but it was a shop for about 20 years, and really kind of had a winding road to getting to bike shop ownership and small business. So kind of happy to tell that story and to kind of see how it led me here, and hopefully some people can take some lessons from that as well. So yeah, excited for the conversation.
Yeah, great to have you. Yeah, I guess that is a good place to start. How did you get here? So tell us I guess if you could, the abbreviated version, but sort of like what's your background in cycling, and then what kind of work have you done before you started the shop?
Yeah, so I've been around bikes my whole life. I guess my relationship with bikes goes back to probably before I was born. I guess my dad's been racing bikes in New England for ever, 40 plus years, and as early as I can remember, I was being dragged to every form of bike racing possible. So it was kind of enforced in me that I would be riding bikes and liking bikes down the line, So my relationship with bikes goes way back. But bike shop ownership, I mentioned in the intro, I'm new to it. So it's been a couple years. I didn't have really any bike industry experience. I come from kind of a more unique background. I joined the military after high school, grew up in Massachusetts in North Andover. Joined the military after high school, joined the Navy, went right in at age 19. I ended up being in military intelligence, so Naval Intelligence, and was attached to the Navy SEALs, so was their intelligence person, so was doing a lot of counterterrorism operations, deployed multiple times to Afghanistan and did work in Somalia and Yemen, and then was at the NSA doing cybersecurity work, looking at different nation state actors that were threatening the United States, and then got out of the military after 7 years, and still worked in the intelligence community in DC at different agencies, and then was kind of burnt out on that way of life, and wanted to move back to New England. So I was flying back to DC one time, and I realized I could didn't have to live in DC anymore and could move back. So I ended up pivoting from kind of government work and consulting work to B2B sales and marketing in cybersecurity. So got a job at a big company called IBM, and then from there kind of hopped around to smaller cybersecurity startups, doing both sales and marketing. And then, was traveling all the time and had a big quota on my head, and was, pretty stressed out with the job that I was doing. And so I took a pause, and I talked to my wife, Catherine, and said, I want to take a pause and figure out what I want to do next, but I would definitely want to be home more and kind of carve out my life a little bit better. So I was working at a shop locally here in Massachusetts for a few months, and then kind of got a hang of it and found out that shop in Topsfield was for sale. That I knew the shop, and I knew the owner was retiring or moving, and he didn't really do too much when it came to marketing, but he had a good business, right? So I kind of wanted to give it a go and talk to some mentors of mine from my dad's old friends that owned bike shops back in the day, and they were like, try it, give it a shot, and see what happens. So it's been a really interesting journey going from kind of the military to software sales to now small business ownership. But that's kind of in my blood too. My whole family is small business owners. My dad owned a landscaping company. My brother does real estate stuff. My sister owns a small business. My mom came from a line of small business. They all own florists on her side. So really, it was kind of bound to happen, I feel like, at some point. But yeah, it's been really fun, translating all the skills from whether it be the military or business to business sales and software stuff into to growing this business now and doing it for myself. So yeah, kind of a fun way to get
Yeah.
here.
It's fascinating, and I know Chris has some questions, but I have to. I would be remiss if I didn't, as a card carrying member of the Tinfoil Hat Club. Do you have any insight into the UAP world? Anything you can share? Any peek under the tent?
Yeah, aliens, UFOs, they're all things that we talk about a lot. So, I can neither confirm or deny the presence of UAPs, but it's funny. I do have there's a couple guys that I worked with that helped stand up the UFO office at the Pentagon, and they were really big into to hunting the or figuring out the UAP stuff, and they were I don't know if they're still working there or not, but hey, they're putting resources into it, so maybe they're out there, Brandon. I don't know. I'll let you know. So.
I figured I have someone here that might actually have some insight. I'd be upset at myself if I didn't ask when I.
We'll talk after the recording.
I was going to say off camera is probably a better place for us to do that.
Yeah, well, I think, your name is pretty legendary in the New England cycling community. I think everyone, especially knows your dad. With all due respect, Jake, Tyler Munroe is like the Tom Munroe Sr. is, yeah, everyone knows him. He's a picture of the community, really great guy. And when I heard you opening a shop, I think I was expecting, okay, people are going to recognize the name, but one thing I was impressed with immediately was just how you managed to get yourself out there. Like, with all due respect to the previous shop in that space, there were a lot of people who didn't visit it, who lived right next door. I used to ride by that all the time, and I never went in there. And so I guess, like, what was your approach to, like, immediately making an impact and making your shop stand out, and, like, what makes your shop different, I guess?
Yeah, no, part of the name was like I went back and forth on name, and I still kind of do on the name of the shop, but my dad's been at it for so long that I'd be remiss to like not use my last name in the shop, where it like kind of helps on the marketing side. So I was talking to him before I opened, and I was like, "What do you think about me using the name?" He was like, "It'd be kind of crazy not to, I've been around a long time." So for better or worse, it probably drives a lot of people away too if you know him, But no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, my main thing was really like the shop, so Topsfield already had like in the parking lot of the shop, without even going into the shop, there were so many group rides leaving from there and people riding by it, right? So, and then looking at the numbers of the shop, it was like he did a good business without even really doing much marketing. So I was like, obviously there's something here. So right when I kind of opened it, my whole thought was like, how do I lean into this? How do I lean into the community? How do I get the people that are gathering there to go on a group mountain road or gravel ride, like literally right outside my shop? How do I get them inside and kind of get them? So really, it was just kind of just being approachable and getting people in the door. I feel like if I get people in the door, I can kind of make them a customer, and because we're approachable and the employees I hired, we're all kind of in that line too of being approachable and knowledgeable, but not kind of snobby, and going against kind of the kind of old school bike shop approach too that drives a lot of people away, I feel like. And we've all kind of been in the shops where if you're not a racer, don't know everything about bikes, that they kind of look down upon you sometimes, or if you're a woman, or if you ride a different bike or what have you. We've heard those stories a lot too. So really my whole thought when I was opening the shop is, how do I be approachable? How do I tap into the community that's already there? And yeah, how do I use some of that heritage and legacy that my dad's created around here as well, and kind of lean into that with the amazing riding and community that we already have in the North Shore. So yeah.
There are some fantastic places to ride, and speaking of that, just having lived in that area, I rode by Dave's Topsfield Bikes. I rode by that shop many times. I've been on rides many times. I've been on rides that left from that parking lot, just like you said. And I actually never had stepped foot in the shop. I've been, in that area in the Northeast, and specifically lived in Ipswich, lived in Essex, and, 25, 30 years. And so it's a testament that you're bringing people in, and it's a fantastic shop. So good job on just the shop. But the location, I think, is brilliant. So like, and I think it wasn't always that location, so we probably have to credit some of the folks
Yeah.
in the past. But what is right out your door? Like what's like the gravel rides and the road rides, and you've got a brilliant asset right there.
Yeah, we have to. So you park your car and you have to walk across a rail trail, a gravel rail trail in front of my shop to get in the front door, which has just been a benefit. I think about it a lot of the benefit of that, of yeah, for our rides selfishly, but also just people riding by there. The other really cool thing about that rail trail is the East Coast Greenway, and the Border to Boston Trail, they call it. So we have people that ride past our shop loaded down with bike packing bags, and they'll pop in for different things, and I ask them where they're going or where they're coming from. A lot of times they're like, I'm riding from Key West to Maine and I'm almost there, and it's like they've been on the road for months, and to be part of that, and they pop in and we hear these stories of people, and give them some stuff and give them a sticker and a beer out of the beer fridge and send them on their way, but like it's just an awesome thing to hear the stories of the people rolling by. And we get so many times, I hear out the door when we have the door open in the summer, it's like, oh, I didn't know there was a bike shop there, and they're riding by on their bikes, so yeah, it's a good asset for sure.
Yeah, I guess, one of the other things about the location, people listening, is it is on the rail trail, but it's also it's not right on the road. And so I guess, like, how have you dealt with that? And going off of that, like, what has been, especially this year, like, what have been some of the big challenges you've had to deal with as a business?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I still have so many people that come in the shop and they're like, I didn't know there was a shop here. I didn't know you were here. And they live like in town or a different town, next town over, what have you. I think the frontage thing, yeah, I go back and forth about that all the time of like, is being on the rail trail really a business benefit, or is that a cool factor benefit and like ease of riding benefit, or what would be better, and I'm always thinking about this stuff. But I think the challenge for me with, not being in a super high traffic area besides the rail trail is, yeah, getting people to know that I'm there and where I'm at. And I think this year really was the first year in business was figuring out the business, right? Figuring out what David created, how I make that my own, and honestly, how to keep the lights on, how to pay bills, how to order bikes, how to do all that stuff. So that was like a huge learning year. This year has really been the building year around building community, building, a customer base, building a marketing engine, and all of that stuff to make people come in the door and find me, and I think that's been a challenge because I'm one person and I have two, 3 or 4 employees, some part-time, two full-time. And so the scalability of that makes it really hard. But, I know how necessary it is because I'm not right on Route 1, or I'm not right on in a main drag or in a city. And so there's a lot of work that I can be doing, a lot more work that I need to be doing to make people know that, hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm ready to, serve you. I'm ready to work on your bike. I'm ready for you guys to come ride with us. But they need to know about me first. And that's been the hard part, so.
Kudos to you for recognizing that gap. I think, part of our early conversations, and full disclosure, we work together. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to work with you. It's a pleasure. And you are a forward-thinking business owner. So I'm grateful for a lot of that, but also you're looking ahead. You are engaged. And we often, if you go back 10 years, 15 years, the marketing was some events, some in-store clinics, some an ad in the Yellow Pages. Believe it or not, that was
Yeah.
still people were getting Yellow Pages delivered to their house, and some direct mail. And I think all those activities are valuable and still have a place. What for you? What has been the would you say the most impactful activity you've done? And maybe it's an easy activity to do and it's just a light lift, or maybe it's been like the most challenging. But what has been, you think, when you look at like the things you've done over the last year and even further back? It could be marketing, it could be operations, but what do you think has really been a driver for you?
Yeah, I've seen this year especially, I think the community building has been a huge driver. And maybe not even to necessarily to revenue, but to just, growing the base and growing, what we're doing and what I want to be doing with the business, and getting more eyes on the business and having people know we're there. But I think out of all of that, I think the biggest thing, whether it be for marketing or for sales or what have you, is just building trust with my customer base. Like, how do I make these people trust me? How do I make them want to come back and shop with me or drop their bike off, whether it be for service, whether it be for just advice or buying a bike? I've found that like building trust with them is absolutely huge. And like, coming down to their level, whether they're new or whether they're a pro, like being able to kind of be a chameleon and talk to them and like not trying to oversell, has been hugely helpful. And we hear that in feedback a lot of like, hey, we come here because you guys are approachable and we trust you. Like we like do whatever to my bike because I trust you. And that's been massive. And I think when I think back to like B2B sales, like and selling software, a lot of times we were just really so focused on retention because a lot of times those customers, if they're staying with you, they're going to buy more over time. And customer retention's a lot cheaper than acquisition. It's like if I can get that customer in the door and they buy a tube from me, but they see what I'm doing and they liked our conversation, they're going to come back and they're going to drop their bike off for service, and that bike will reach its end of life and they're going to buy a bike from me. And all of that stuff's not, I'm not spending money doing that. We're just building the trust so that they come in and do that. And that's something that I kind of like really focus on. I make sure to, remember people's names, remember the rides they did the weekend before, remember the little things about their bike or what have you. And same with my mechanics, do a great job at that. And you see people's face light up like, oh, you remembered my name? That's crazy. But then, they're so much more inclined to tell their friends and tell others. So it's kind of grassroots and, it's not big marketing spend on that, but it's something that I think is like an intangible thing that like has helped so much. So, yeah.
Just to follow up on that, has there been anything like a situation in particular where you've like recognized like either this is a huge opportunity to build trust or like we dropped the ball? Sometimes I think those drop the ball moments are even more valuable than with the wins, right? When you recognize we can do better here. Is there anything
Yeah.
that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened like working on bikes or things like that. Like there's been miscommunications or we didn't like maybe, we didn't send a quote to them and then they come and they're shocked at, the amount of money that their service bill was, and we could have communicated better to let them know like, hey, you need a whole new drivetrain. They come and they're shocked and pissed off. My approach to that is like if I have to lose a little bit of money to still gain the trust on that, or not even lose money, but like, not make as much money in order to build the trust. And like at the end of the day, if they leave there and they're like, I'm happy with the result of whatever happened, whatever conflict happened, I'm happy with the result and I'm still going to shop there, then that's a win for me. Like I would rather that than be all pissed off and on both sides and be like, no, you're paying this bill whether you like it or not, which I've had happen and we've seen, but like I would just much rather leave on good terms when they're still going to come back and be happy with us. So that stuff happens. I'd say that on the positive side though, I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but just little tiny things of like remembering things about people, and like I make notes on people's accounts, or I make notes about them of like, he's riding in such and such place this weekend, like remember that. And then they come in and you bring up this ride that like happened a month ago and I hadn't seen him since. And they're like, how'd you remember that? Like how, and it's like such a meaningful thing that they're like, that's so crazy. Like you remembered this ride, like, or this thing I was doing, or that, I was going to my son's college graduation, and it just goes so far. So I think, yeah, on the negative side, like there's definitely ways to kind of, some conflict resolution stuff where we leave them and they're still going to be a customer of yours and not going to go to the shop down the street. But I think there's far more opportunity on the positive side where just, trust and memory and being inquisitive helps so much.
Brilliant use of your CRM.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool that you do that. No, I guess one of the things you had mentioned is like size of the shop and both physical size and you size of the number of employees. And we've discussed in the past, where you're at and like with scaling. Okay, how do you scale while keeping things sustainable and finding that sweet spot of where you're not overloading employees, but you're also not you don't have too many employees. So how have you kind of balanced that? As the shop has grown over the last couple of years.
That's a good question. I'm actually trying to figure that out right now. So if you guys have ideas too, feel free to let me know. But no, honestly, like my whole thing early on was that I want to stay as lean as I can in terms of inventory and in terms of hiring and in terms of everything. We all know that the bike industry is in a really weird place. I've seen a lot of shops that have been in business a long time still have inventory from COVID or pre-COVID that they can't get rid of at cost even. So I was like, when I was starting the shop, I was like, I don't want to be that. I would much rather like have to special order a bike or possibly lose a sale than to have, millions of dollars of inventory in my back room that I'm sweating about every single night, which it has its pros and cons, right? Just in time ordering is only good if the inventory is there. So yeah, there are times I lose sales, right? But to be lean and to make it where I can, special order stuff has kept my stress levels down, and it honestly probably adds more to my plate than having a ton of inventory because I need to be on top of it. I need to be on top of the ordering. I'm the only one who does that, and I also need to like have a good pulse on my market to know like what should I be ordering that I might sell, that I think someone's going to buy, that I'm not, in over my head about. And Chris, you mentioned it. My square footage of my shop is like, I'd say my retail and service space together is like maybe 1,500 square feet, probably not even. And then I have, some storage in the basement next door, but it's nothing crazy. The space, excuse me, the space of my shop has been definitely a pain point and something that's we've needed to figure out, but we've made it work, But yeah, scalability, whether it becomes a space or whether it comes to ordering and also like time. I have two mechanics that are awesome. They've both been at it for a really long time. And then I have my only full-time employees. And then I have two part-time people that help with kind of sales and service and what have you. And then had some high school kids in the summer that kind of helped out. But for the most part, it's me and two guys, 2.5 guys maybe. And so, making sure that in the summer, those guys aren't getting burnt out, but also making sure that I have enough runway to keep them happy in the winter and fully paid, so that we can keep them employed. That's a game too of the employee side. But yeah, it's been just I don't know. It's been a constant balance and juggling. I'd say it was really hard the first year because I had no data. When I bought the shop from Dave, he handed me a yellow pad of paper that had his numbers from the last 10 years, and it said bikes, service, total, and nothing about ordering, nothing about anything. So the first year I was kind of figured out, like, I don't even know how many bikes I need. How many bikes am I going to sell? So now with a year's worth of data, years plus worth of data, I can look back and know, okay, I sold this many hybrids, I sold this many kids bikes. I didn't do so well in this category, so maybe we'll spend less on that and we'll focus on these. And then also, I like to have cool new stuff in. So like, where are the trends and what do I want to kind of take a gamble on and bring in without, spending too much money on it. But I like cool stuff. So I want to have cool stuff in. I want people in the door. So yeah, it's really a balance, and I'm honestly kind of figuring it out as I go. But I will say, like, having data is so crucial. I was like so confused in the first year and like so underwater. And now having data to be able to plan, whether it be for inventory or scheduling or really just anything, has been just like a world better that I can actually look at data now, and yeah, my first year ended and I was happy with where we were in terms of revenue. However, I didn't know if it was good or bad because it was my first year with no real data beforehand. And then I put a 20% growth target on that number. And I think we're at around 50 or 60% over that this year, which has been phenomenal growth, which I'm really excited about. But now it's figuring out, okay, now maybe this is our baseline. Where do we go from here and what's realistic in the future? And how do I plan for that with having a small space, a small staff, and being lean, you know? So it's all, yeah, really interesting, fun problems, but, you know, hard things to figure out. So, yeah.
I got
I'll
one
do it.
follow up on that,
Oh,
Brandon, if
go
that's
ahead.
okay.
Yeah, please.
So I guess like you talk about being lean, and a lot of bike shops who still are sitting on inventory from COVID, and obviously that's a whole other conversation getting into that. But and you also using data to really inform your decisions. What do you think is like one big mistake that shop owners are making when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business operations? Because you obviously have a unique perspective, having that experience outside the industry. So I guess what if there's like kind of one key thing you think that shop owners are doing that's hurting them, like what do you think it is?
It goes back to data 100%. They're not looking at the data. They're not collecting the right data. They're not looking at the data. They're not analyzing it. We have so many tools at our disposal right now with AI. I mean, I use AI all the time and put my P&L through it. I put my POS data through it, and I have it identify gaps. I have it identify if I'm doing well, where opportunities for me. It's so easy to use this stuff and have it project if you have the data. And if you're not collecting the data and using it, then that's like the biggest gap by far. And I think a lot of um, old school bike shops just they're like, no, I know how to do this. I don't have that data. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 30 years or what have you. And it's like, if they looked at their data, I think they'd be shocked to see some of these things that maybe aren't selling as well as they think they are, or, inventory turns, like all that stuff is like so easy to track if you are diligent with, having the right data to do it. So I think that's the main thing is not using that stuff at, what we have at our disposal.
So I'm going to give you a peek under the tent. I think we're going to send the first email out tomorrow, but we're having a webinar next week, next Thursday, actually a week from today. We're recording on Thursday around winning 2026. What are some of the things? And the goal, it's there's some marketing there. Obviously, it's around marketing, but it's really around like looking at what are the KPI. What are the things I should measure?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that I should be doing? Where am I going to focus? Like, you can't do everything. So I would say to your point, like around the how am I gonna scale next year? We're here. We'll have that that sort of selfish plug from me, and then fantastic data. I couldn't agree with you more. Like in that analysis, like that is, you have so much information and there's so many ways to slice and dice it now, and we have tools that are McKinsey level
Yeah.
consultants that are ready to be activated, and they're at our service. Now you have to have a mind for some of this stuff, but it's there. You have
Yeah.
to think it's how you use it. You do, obviously you've been in different worlds, so I think it's good to be able to share some of that experience, and have that recommendation. I couldn't agree with you more.
I will say though, you mentioned KPIs. Like the data is like you can get so lost in the data if you don't have solid things that you're tracking towards that you want to be able to measure. Then it's just data. So like having firm KPIs and tracking them, and staying honest with them and having good goals, like the data just helps with all that too. So I think that's crucial. And it took me a while to figure those out. The MBDA, like the P2 group with the KPI tracker there, has helped me a ton. And then for my own business, figuring out what like sub KPIs that I need to have that are different from the shop in my P2 group that's doing, 7 million a year. They have different KPIs than I do as a small shop, in Massachusetts. So yeah.
Well, we'll
Well,
get you there. We'll get you that stuff.
well, I just wanted to add a comment to that. I think you're bringing up like different types of shops. It's not just size. Like, I
Yeah.
was just in Hawaii and I had a long conversation with the shop owner there, and he's got 3 locations, and they're 3 very different shops
Mhm.
because it's a tourist place, and one of the shops is right in the heart of all the resorts. And you walk in there, and I went in there a few times, and it's super bare bones, really
Yeah.
bare bones, mostly rentals. and a few very, very key choice things that he sells. So like water bottles, nutrition, gloves, stuff like that. And then like garments and very garment various because he's near the Ritz Carlton. So his mentality is, well, if somebody forgets something, they're not going to want to borrow it. They're just going to want to buy it. Like,
Right.
what's $400? We're going to buy it. She's very well thought out, and it's like that's a completely different shop to your shop in a city where they're servicing commuters and stuff. And
Right.
so, he's even thought, within his own business, like each shop fills a different niche, and he's tailored each shop's inventory and size and
Right.
staff as well to fit that, which I think is really interesting, and it shows that like yeah, if you do it right, you can nail it. But also, if he was to fill that shop up with 100 bikes for sale, he would be
Yeah.
long since out of business.
That's interesting too, because, I think that's something I'm still figuring out is like, what kind of shop am I? Because like I obviously have my own passions and my own things I'm into. So I want to get dragged into the stuff that I like, which sometimes aligns with my customer base. Hopefully that's the case. That's why I'm doing it too. But like also going back to the data, now I have the knowledge of understanding like what are my top selling categories? What are my top selling bikes? Where should I focus? What kind of shop am I? Luckily for me, my shop with the location and being on the rail trail and on good mountain bike trails, gravel trails, and road riding, it kind of is a shop that could do a little bit of everything. But also that's kind of a curse too, because then I need to stock a little bit of everything and be knowledgeable about it and like have, a wide variety of a lot of different things. But I think, finding out that identity is kind of fun, but also hard because that goes into all of your business decisions of, like he had a focus on, he knows very focused, like, I'm going to get these things in because I know they're going to sell. I'm not going to do bikes at all. That's not realistic for me. I have to do bikes. I have to do accessories. I have to do service. I have to do some rentals. So like, how much do you put into each thing and how much time do you put into each thing? Yeah, it's just a fun, but also really hard and stressful thing.
Well, and I imagine there is some of that. I'm thinking specifically about your cider donut ride, which is such a
Yeah.
brilliant idea. I love that. Gravel ride around a beautiful North Shore. The trails. I had the pleasure of pre-riding the course with Chris, and just an amazing route and beautiful. Off the beaten path. Sort of like how is this place real kind of experience, and and then your turkey burner. I think you guys did a ride just after Thanksgiving, and so I think that community piece to me, there is a little bit of you build it, they will come, and I can only imagine
Yeah.
that you are seeing some of that in the sales, without knowing. I do imagine that is coming through, like, and gravel's pretty awesome right now anyway. But that said, I would imagine you're probably outsized. If you looked at other shops percentage wise, like what you're doing and what others are doing, because I really do think you're crushing it in that space, because it is that community piece is really there. Like you are
Yeah.
providing a value. Like it's important to have places to go and to places to get involved with.
Yeah.
And so I think you're doing great there. So thinking about scaling, and I put you on the hot seat a little bit here, what are you thinking about next year? Like what are your bets if you had had to sort of like put your gambling hat on? What would you say you're thinking about for 2026?
It's tough. This like gives me like anxiety thinking about because I was in software sales, and so anytime I had a good year in software sales, it was like such an unrealistic bump to my number that I had to hit the next year. So now it's like, oh, I targeted 20% growth this year. I'm going to be at like 50% growth. So do I go for more growth than I should next year, or do I like, what should I do? Like I'm like the sales manager that used to yell at me, and I'm the anxious guy. I'm both to myself right now. But no, I think still targeting like, some serious growth. I want to hold myself accountable. I want to grow the business. But I think, 20% growth or more. But I think a lot of that, will be experimenting with getting, some higher end stuff in for sure, doing some rentals, and, trying just some new exciting things to bring in more revenue or different revenue than I had this year. So really, yeah, I think it's, having my bread and butter stuff, rail trail bikes, kids bikes, entry level stuff be there and pushing those hard, doing a lot more on the service side in terms of what we're offering, but also the scale of that. And then also introducing, newer stuff that when people come in the shop, they're like, that's a really cool bike or that's a really cool thing that I don't see elsewhere because we're not a specialized shop. We're not a Trek shop. We're not a Cannondale shop. So I could do fun things like do custom builds with, smaller brands, get more niche things in, get some higher dollar stuff in and try it out. So my bet is really just like grow the business on the foundation that I've built it on, which is community, which is trust, but also bringing in higher quality, cooler stuff that we don't really see in Massachusetts or in New England or in the North Shore as much, and taking a gamble. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I was really lean. I was really cautious in the first 2 years. I'm still going to be cautious, but I'm going to take a bet on the stuff that I think that I'm pretty confident I'll be able to sell or that I know, at least I'm happy about carrying and I want the vibe of the shop to go that way. So that's kind of what I'm going to try, and always having an eye on the data, always having a really, really keen eye on margin, and focusing on who are the brands that are going to work with me being a small shop, but also that bring the highest margin that I can, make sure that I'm having a solid margin, not getting screwed all the time. And also that, I don't know, can work with the vibe that I'm trying to do. And then definitely doubling down on events. I already have like 50 event ideas for next year that I'm thinking about. Noah Levitt, shout out him for the cider donut ride. He's been the one that has kind of brought that to fruition. And in the past couple of years, it's been out of the shop, which has just been so cool. We had 3 gravel rides in October that had over 150 people at them, including the cider donut ride. Yeah, the Black Friday ride had 80 people, and it was pretty cold that day and was awesome. And then just Thursday night gravel rides that bring 50, 60 people every week. So I want to expand, not necessarily just the gravel stuff, but go into different disciplines, but also have some pretty exciting ideas on other things. So stay tuned for more events to come. So some ridiculous things like the cider donut ride. So don't think we're not going to get less ridiculous. We're not going to tame it at all. So
I have an event. We'll have to talk about this. After the recording, I've got an event idea for you that's already been done, but wants to expand to new countries. So we might be a good opportunity.
Sounds good. I mean, I'm all ears all the time about weird stuff for sure. But yeah, I think those are like, to sum it up, like focus, heavily on the business growth and in different ways, but building that foundation and community, and then just really, really, really doubling down on community growth outside of revenue. Like I almost treat that like a separate, not a business. I almost treat that as like a nonprofit. Like, how do I build this community? And yes, dollars might come from that, but I honestly like focus so much differently on that of like, how do I make this thing awesome, this community? And yeah, sure, it benefits the shop at some point, however much that does, that's great. But like, I don't necessarily care as much about that. I want people to come to these rides and go home and just be like, that was awesome, no matter what. Like, and I had a good time, and I'm going to tell my friends about it, and they're going to come to this place that, they hadn't been before. We get so many people from Boston that come up. We get people from Vermont that come to the North Shore of Massachusetts when they have, insane riding up there, from Maine, from, everywhere. I'm always so shocked and humbled when people, tell me where they're from and they're coming to small town Topsfield to do our rides. And the town takes note of that. The town's so stoked at what we're doing because we're not only building the community for us, the town is getting recognition and people are, seeing the cool stuff we have going on in the North Shore, which is amazing too. So, yeah.
Well, you can feel it, like the energy, like, I see you light up when you're talking about it. There's no question. I have to imagine you're getting out on the bike, you're on these rides. I mean, that's a big part of this is, is some passion. There's some joy there. Are you, what does riding mean to you today? And how do you, I'm thinking about, Agita, you talked about like sort of the stress and thinking about next year and what are you doing right now to sort of like, maintain some joy? Like, what are you doing for, your well-being, whether that's your mental health or your physical health or family health? What have you been doing for joy?
Yeah, riding for sure. Like, I mean, I wouldn't start a bike shop if I wasn't like into bikes, you know, like I have to be riding. We close the shop sometimes for rides, like cider donut ride. Oh, that was on a Sunday this year. Last year though, other, you know, times we'll close the shop and because we're all on the ride. My two mechanics, Finn and Ed, they're both huge gravel and mountain bike riders, road riders. They want to work at a bike shop because they like to ride bikes, and I want them to continue to work at the bike shop and to like bikes. So in order to do that, we need to all ride bikes. I was on the Cider Donut 100 this year. Chris towed me along for the whole 100 miles, so that was really nice of him. But yeah, those are the things that keep me going, you know, that keep me, you know, a lot of times on the bike, I'm thinking about the shop, but a lot of times on the bike, it's also just such a release that I need to do it so much more. And, you know, sometimes I go out and I don't want to think about things, so I push myself as hard as I possibly can and puke all over the place. No, I'm just kidding. But I push myself super hard and like don't want to think about other things. Other times, you know, I go out for a nice easy spin and I want to think about how I grow the shop. I want to think about these ideas that I get on the ride and stop and take a note of what I thought about, you know. But yeah, I'm closed Sunday, Monday, so those are my big ride days. I oftentimes in the nicer weather ride to work. I can ride like 90% gravel or mountain bike to work, which is pretty awesome. So, and that's what I do. I'm not a huge road guy. I like riding on the road, but I'm more of a gravel and mountain bike guy. So that's really cool because I have the time in the morning to kind of get in the right headspace to then go to the shop, open it up, have a day at the shop, and then get in the right headspace before getting home too. And I have a 1-year-old, which has made it a little bit harder this year to ride, but squeezing that in, including on the trainer. But yeah, if I didn't have that, my mental health would be in a far worse spot with the stress and anxiety. Honestly, when I was in software sales, when I was in the military and traveling all the time, I didn't ride as much and I kind of got away from the bike a little bit. And my mental health was in a way worse spot than I am now, even though I'm probably the same level of stress. It's just different stress. You know, it's my own stress. I'm building my own thing. So I'm the one that's held accountable on what happens. And in some ways that's, you know, a lot of weight on my shoulders. In some other ways it's awesome, you know. But yeah, I do that. I go for walks. I listen to podcasts. I, you know, try and spend as much time with the family now that I'm home and here. And yeah, just really, you know, try and take some time away from the shop on things to get my mind off of it, but also to get my mind right. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really grateful for your time. I know where you are, but not everybody does. MunroeVelo.com. But the shop's out of Topsfield. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. Call the shop. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Munroe Velo. It's Munroe. It's been the story of my life. Everyone's Monroe. I know we spell it wrong. Mun. Munroe Velo Velo. Yeah, reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook. Call the shop. Swing by if you're around. Come join our rides. We do have a really solid Strava community or Strava group. So join the Munroe Velo Strava group. We post all of our gravel rides, mountain bike rides, everything, events on there. And it's really engaged and great. So we're doing rides throughout the winter. We have a ride called Crooked Christmas coming up, a gravel ride that goes down to Crooked Lane in Manchester, which will be fun. We'll probably do a New Year's ride at some point. And then we are doing Thursday night mountain bike rides, night rides, because we're not doing the Thursday night gravel ride anymore. So come join us. You know, basically all abilities welcome. We kind of have different groups that break out. So we'd love to ride with you and join our community. And if you buy something from the shop, that's cool too. So yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for your time, Jake. And you know, we'd love to check in again with you, next year or sometime middle of the year. If I know it's going to get crazy soon, so I know there's a lot going on. But just really appreciate your time, taking your time out of your busy day and sharing what you've been doing and what's going on. Thanks so much. And
thanks for both of you guys. Appreciate the time on this, but also the effort you're putting into this podcast. I think it's a really cool area that, when I was starting the business, I was looking for podcasts kind of in this genre of like, it's such a specific thing, but like not all small business podcasts were like a bike shop that have like a service aspect and a sales aspect, but it's really cool. Like I listened to the Mike O'Connell one to hear from the reps, to hear from bike shop owners and all this stuff that's like kind of such a niche area, but such an interesting area. So it's going to be a great resource, I think, to so many people in my position, but in others as well.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here and listening, and everyone who's listening. Thank you so much, and we'll keep doing it and keep listening. Thanks so much. Anything you want to leave before we go?
No, come join us. Come ride with us.
I'm excited for the Crooked Christmas. It's on my list. So I'll be there.
Sounds good.
Take care. Thanks so much.